vision. It's vision. It's how they're aiming their mind. They're aiming their mind where they want to go. They're not aiming their mind where they don't want to go. And that's a really powerful thing. And I hope young people grab onto that idea, and because young people like you are the people changing the world, and your where you aim your mind, what you're trying to do with your show, what you're trying to do with your life, has a lot of power.
Hey friends, you're tuned in to the Learn or Be Learned podcast, a show where wisdom meets curiosity in order to discover the human experience. I'm your host, Shiva D, and remember, you either learn from or you're learned from. Now, let's get back to the show. Welcome back, friends, to another great episode. Today we have an awesome guest, Dr. Gina Schneider. She is a licensed psychotherapist who specializes in stress, anger, and management in that regard. And if I'm not mistaken, you came out with, relatively recently, you came out with a book called Frazzle Brain. And
Exactly.
I think it's been a year, right? It's a 1-year anniversary.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
She's also an author, and I'm really excited to hear her expertise. Dr. Schneider, if you'd like to, give a little bit more of an intro about yourself, I think the audience would love to hear it.
Sure, happy to. And thanks so much for inviting me on your show. Mm-hmm. I am a licensed psychotherapist. I've been working in the field of psychotherapy for 30 years now, 30 plus years. So I also do corporate training, executive coaching, and I'm an author of the book Frazzle Brain. And the book Frazzle Brain, Break Free from Anxiety, Anger, and Stress Using Advanced Discoveries in Neuropsychology, is really about looking at ways of soothing ourselves. And the reason I wrote the book is because I remember doing a training in front of a bunch of therapists, and I was talking about stress and anger management, and I talked about self-soothing. And one of the therapists raised her hand and said, "What's self-soothing?" And I went, wow, we really need to know what this is and how to do it. And
right.
And these are therapists, that are asking these questions. So it's not like it's something you would expect everyone every day to know about. So yes, I compiled a bunch of stories from my own personal life, clinical practice, some research I've done in neuropsychology to show people some real soothing techniques. And so the goal of writing the book was really to give people also a soothing experience in reading a book on anxiety, anger, and stress, because a lot of the books that I've been recommending to clients for years have these sort of checklists. The first few chapters are like, this is all the terrible stuff you can feel, and these are all the terrible things you're going through, and then you have to wait till chapter 4 or later to get any kind of advice on how to feel better. And I wanted a book that actually would feel good to the reader to read and be soothing. So that's the feedback I'm getting. So that's one of the things that I'm happy about.
Mm-hmm. And I saw that in your book, you talked about there's a few ways in dealing with stress that may surprise people. Is perhaps one of those involved with nature?
Yes, and there is some really interesting research on the effects of the natural environment on our nervous system. And that can be everything from houseplants. For example, people in old age homes live longer who have a houseplant in their room to take care of.
Wow.
That forest bathing, they call it in Japan. Shinrin yoku is the word. I think I may have butchered, but in Japanese, but it is the term for spending time in a forest. And they were able to show that 2 hours in the forest can give you 30 days of antidepressant effects on your nervous system. And there are things called Mycobacterium vaccae, which is a bacteria that's in soil, composted soil, that has natural antidepressant effects when we breathe it in. And so if
Mm-hmm.
you're maybe have a little potted plants with some rich loamy soil, you'll notice that just doing that can help you feel a little better.
Mm-hmm.
And in our modern world, we're really inundated with a lot of lifeless things. You know, computers are dead things, phones are dead
Mm-hmm.
things, cars are dead things, machines are dead, right? But our experience with living things like pets, trees, birds, all of the living things around us, if we can give ourselves a few moments of going at the pace of nature, slowing down, observing it, smelling, tasting, savoring our natural world wherever we find it, that it actually has healing effects on our body. It boosts our immune system, helps us recover faster from injuries or diseases.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really healing, and we don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's
Right.
and it's pretty easy. I mean, even if you aren't able to hike in the forest, they were able to distinguish time in the forest from the effects of exercise, because exercise in and of itself, like taking a walk anywhere, as long as it's not, I guess, a toxic waste dump. But if you're taking a walk
Mm-hmm.
in a reasonably healthy environment,
Right.
um, uh, not a war zone, but somewhere where you're safe, you will get a lot of good antidepressant, anti-anxiety effects from that and benefits from that. However, even if you can't walk and you just need to sit in your car on a road in the forest, you will still get those same antidepressant effects if you're breathing in the air. So that's nice to know. And it's simple.
Right. Right. So, I read somewhere about the potential benefits of even walking barefoot. Is there any studies on that? Any research?
I don't know a lot. I've read a little bit about the idea of walking barefoot. There is something about being grounded to the earth in real life
Mm-hmm.
that can be very healing.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we need to be careful again where we're walking,
Of
but
course.
uh, I don't recommend walking through broken glass and things like that. Um, However, there is something very healing about physically touching and being in physical contact with the earth, with grass, with
Mm-hmm.
um, with the natural world.
Right.
It Because we are natural beings and we become cut off from our natural selves when we're in this modern world, and the more cut off we are from our self as beasts, our beastly nature,
Right.
the more we can sort of stuff down and avoid paying attention to anything that is actually uh, that we're feeling in our body. So if we're having low levels of pain in a particular part of our body, but we're ignoring it all day because our attention is elsewhere,
Mm-hmm.
we're more likely to become injured. But when we're in contact with the natural world, we're more in contact also often with our internal self. So I tell people, if you're going to be in nature, also take the earbuds out, turn off your phone, you know, just really be present mentally as well.
Right.
But there is something to being physically connected and grounded. That's why a lot of times walks on the beach, if you live near an ocean, we are fortunate enough to live near the ocean, and we might hike down the mountain, scurry down the mountain with our hiking boots, and we take them off and put our feet in the sand and let the ocean waves, hit our feet, and feeling that connection with the earth is just immediately, soothing. And then the smell of
Mm-hmm.
the ocean and so forth. But you can get that experience, anywhere where it's safe to to be in nature and have your body connected. You know, people joke about tree huggers. The idea of hugging a tree is this sort of cliche for people that care about the environment, but there is something about physical contact with nature that is quite healing.
Hmm. I actually did some research, anthropology research in Kenya a few years ago, and with the indigenous people, you don't see our common ailments, right? Things like skin issues, diabetes, Alzheimer's. These modern day problems are almost non-existent in their culture, in their societies, and it's almost to the point where it makes you wonder. It's probably exactly what you were mentioning earlier, right? The dead phones, the dead computers, the detachment from nature, as well as probably the free radicals building up from the fact that we are moving further away from our natural beings. And I just resonate very much with what you're saying. And is this an idea you incorporate with your clients and people you give advice to?
Yes, it definitely is. And it's good that you brought up, and that's great that you've had experience directly with indigenous people in Africa. I do have a small section in my book about the basically mud, being in the
Yeah.
earth. Parents are often horrified with their little 3-year-old, covered in mud. Um, but it's actually quite good for you, again, as long as it's not a toxic waste dump. That being in mud, and it helps heal a lot of skin ailments.
Mm,
There's a lot of curative powers in certain soils and clays that indigenous people know about, and they've used those to help heal wounds and prevent infection. And there is something about being connected to the earth and having experiences in with, because what mud is often is it's a lot of composted stuff that's ground in,
mm,
and that's made up of a lot of different elements that are very good for us.
mm-hmm.
um, so we don't need to be horrified if our kids are playing in it. Might make for a little cleanup mess later, but not a big deal. But I do think that is the diseases, these diseases of the modern world, stress, panic, anxiety, and a lot of that stuff stems from this pressure to get everything done now, and this uh, inability to pause and be quiet and live in
Mm,
silence for a little while, and even just listen to the sounds of nature.
right.
And and when we do that, we can discover kind of our own sounds, because our own bodies make a sound when we breathe, right, and
Mm-hmm.
when we swallow, and so just being in contact with our own physicality helps us make
Right.
minor corrections. We notice things that can prevent injury, and we also might notice some discomfort in our body that needs attention that we could put off for a long time until it
Right.
becomes something more serious. So there's a lot of benefits to it besides just the anti-anxiety benefits, and being able to be playful, rough and tumble play. I remember as a child rolling down grassy hills, and just
Mm-hmm.
rolling and feeling my body, on the
Right.
earth, picking up a few twigs in my hair and laughing with my friends. And that sort of rough and tumble play is also a really important thing that children these days are being robbed of. The wrestling and the, you know, jumping into the dirt, you know, um, and and that's actually very important for our brain development, to be able to play and roughhouse, and a lot of that is connected to being able to be outside and have safe places to roam as a child.
Mm-hmm. And I think I've also read that children that have greater exposure to being outdoors when they're younger often have less allergies and things like that, especially to pollen and other
Mm-hmm.
types of allergies. So there definitely is some sort of symbiotic relationship with nature that we're slowly departing from, that I think is not talked about enough, not yet at least, but I think it will be, because we have so many modern day health problems, especially, extreme stress and anxiety and almost a sense of, I think it really resonated with me when you mentioned earlier, essentially you're talking about being in tune with your body and
Mm-hmm.
being able to kind of understand, okay, this is how I'm feeling, this is how my body is feeling right now. And almost that sense of when you're in tune with yourself, you can kind of realize, ooh, I need to go get active. I'm feeling a little, lethargic here, or I'm feeling a little drained. Let me get some sunlight. And that sort of being in tune almost disappears the more you go into this rabbit hole of staying indoors constantly, staying away from nature, and it's almost too easy in the modern world to almost detach yourself from all natural items in life, right? So I thought that was really interesting.
Yes, and our we do have a bias towards things that are fast and easy, and that's what
Hmm.
a lot of commercial television always says. It's easy, it's fast. Um, and actually those aren't good for us, doing
Uh-huh.
hard things like chopping our wood for our heat,
Right.
and going out and gathering berries or for our food, or making things a little bit harder by having to be active and doing more physically is a remedy for depression and anxiety. In fact, you know, action is the enemy of depression if you can get
Mm.
up and get moving. So we're behaving very much in our modern world like depressed people, even if we don't have a diagnosis of depression, because we're sitting
Hmm.
all day and we're staring at something. And cave people didn't sit and stare at a cave wall all day,
Right. Right.
it was just, they're out
Even
there
then, they're still
roaming.
in nature.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
right.
Uh,
But they're out there doing stuff, and maybe they're
yeah.
sitting for a while and then getting up and moving, but we're we're made to move, and we're made to be active. And your point about allergies, it's true that children exposed to animals too at a young age, are less likely to have allergies to animals and down and
Hmm.
so forth. So it is true that our exposure to nature, our exposure to it's good for our immune system functioning
Right.
and being slowing down and letting things take a long time.
Hmm. So, when I came back from Kenya, um, I had, removed all these modern comforts, right? So things like air conditioning, cold water, all these comforts disappeared. And then slowly, as much as I tried to refrain from quickly diving back into our, modern world, slowly over time, it just naturally happens where you're back to, baseline of what life is here. And so I want that, leads me to my next question that I was thinking about is, how does one kind of keep that sense, that balance, and in order to lower stress and lower anxiety and things like that?
Yeah, you bring up a good point. It's like when you're in the environment where people are moving slowly. I remember people talking about in Italy, everybody's off work early, and
Hmm.
Americans work like crazy hours, and my friend lived in Guatemala for a couple of years, and I picked her up at the airport, and she just was in culture shock. She had to go to a mall to pick up something, and it was just like being in a mall was so overwhelming,
Mm.
because she'd had these little shops that she would
Yeah.
enter, that were mom and pop shops, and it was all
Right.
very different. So, and again, slow paced, friendly, very
Community.
different culture. So you asked about how. I think a lot of times we don't realize how easy it is to make these modifications that could be so healthy. And one thing I recommend that I practice is every morning, doing every day, practicing stress relieving practices. So what I do is I exercise every day, and I meditate. So I start my morning with a brief meditation. I sit up in my bed, close my eyes. I ease into the day with my meditation. I start my day with a lot of self-care. I make myself a good breakfast. If it's a nice day outside, I'll go for a walk, or I'll do some kind of workout at home. So I've started my day before I even start my work day at 9 a.m. I've already practiced stress management. I'm already filling myself up with sort of a peaceful, slower pace. I'm well fueled, and so forth. So I tell people, if we're living in the modern world and we're not practicing stress management activities every day, we are going to set ourselves up for physical, mental, and emotional illnesses. We need that every day. But we don't necessarily need. I remember there was this funny commercial that somebody did. It was like a parody on all the things you're supposed to do to be a well-rounded, healthy person, and sort of shows this person having, making this elaborate breakfast and doing a 90-minute yoga workout, and then, having tea with friends, and then doing all, by the time
everything
they're
but
done
work.
Everything but work. It's like, that's great. You
that
did
sounds
nothing
really nice.
productive. Sounds great. But like, we really can't live like that. But we don't need to have, a full 8 to 10 hour relaxation practice to feel relaxed and calm throughout our day. If we start our day, though, with some kind of relaxation and stress management practice, and people can modify that. I know some people, they write every morning. Getting morning sunlight, if you can, is really good to set our circadian rhythms so that our hormone levels are where they're supposed to be. At night, we sleep better when we do that, because our melatonin kicks in when the sun goes down, and then our hormone levels get sort of set up by our morning routine. So I think that if you aren't doing that, you are probably already feeling some symptoms. Maybe more irritability, maybe more distress, maybe trouble sleeping at night, maybe some gut issues. GI tract issues are often common with stress in the modern world. So we don't need to have an extreme makeover. We don't need to live, in a hut somewhere. I know a lot of people have a fantasy of, going to Costa Rica and surfing all day, and for some people they can make that happen, and that's fine for them. But you can be pretty healthy and happy and calm in the modern world if you are practicing self soothing techniques every day.
So, you mentioned meditation helps, exercise helps. So first off, I wanted to clarify, when you say exercise, does it matter what kind of exercise you're doing? Just walking is fine?
Yeah.
Because I've heard, especially in my younger years, I did weightlifting mainly. And, I would hear from people that, that's not, although that's great, it's not enough because you're not, usually not affecting your cardiovascular health to any crazy extent, because it's somewhat sedentary, right? You lift a weight, you put it down. And so I'm just curious, when people say, just exercise, is it anything that gets the heart moving? Or what do we consider as optimal exercise?
Yes, and yes. It's, weightlifting is great. When we work our muscles, we are also really doing a great service to our body and our muscles. When we're strengthening our muscles, they support our whole system, support our spine, our internal organs, help prevent osteoporosis, especially for little people like me. And if you like weightlifting, great, do it. Just do it in the right form and not to injury, obviously. And it's really good for you. Weight bearing exercise is really good for you, and walking is really good for you. Uh, Movement of any kind is really good for you. There's even studies that show little exercise snacks, they call them, are good for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been doing those sometimes between therapy sessions, like especially when you have the afternoon energy dip. Most people,
Yeah.
3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you're just kind of like, I'm ready for a siesta.
Right.
And
Or a
so I
coffee.
have, yeah, so caffeine. And one of the things I've been doing is we have a deck. We have like an outdoor deck that kind of has a nice view. And I'll walk down to over to the deck, and I might do some jumping jacks, or some 1, 2 minute, 3 minute, 5 minutes of a little exercise snack. Just
Mm.
just some easy movements that get my heart rate up and wake me up and oxygenate my brain, and then I'm raring to go over the rest of the day. So a lot of times we just again put so much pressure on ourselves that it's got to be the right, we got to have a personal trainer, and we got to like bodybuild, and we got to. And if you're
Right.
into that, great, but it's not necessary for health and well-being. It's just move in whatever way you like. Put on some rock and roll music and dance. Um, just whatever is going to give you a little burst of joy or pleasure. uh, makes you feel like good in your body. That helps too. And but it is nice. I mean, if you want to do the optimal thing, it's nice to mix up your week and do some weightlifting, do some
Mm-hmm.
cardio, do some play, just
Mm-hmm.
play. Play
Right.
a sport with some friends. I badly play tennis with my husband, and we really don't play tennis. I mean, we really just chase balls around the court, but we are getting exercise, right? We are
Yeah.
trying. We are trying. And same thing with basketball or whatever you like to do, soccer, football. Movement is really healthy, and also getting in touch with the playfulness inside of our bodies. The playful spirit is so healing for our psyche, and
Mm-hmm.
and and helps us live in the moment and feel more alive and more hopeful, because
Right.
we're in that sort of child mind of just playful exploration. And
Right.
that is very, very good for counteracting the negative effects of stress in our body.
Mm-hmm. And you also mentioned meditation. Now, I've heard plenty of people mention meditation, the benefits, how great it can be. But something I'm still trying to, understand is why is there so much resistance to start? I think, myself included, other people have, expressed the same concern. It's everyone knows that it has benefits, but to getting to that point of consistently doing it, there is so much resistance for that initial period before the results ever kick in, right? So, I'm sure you've prescribed this to your own clients and whatnot. Do you notice a resistance as well? And why do you think
Hmm.
that is?
I think there's a natural resistance to change for several reasons. One is maybe we don't know if this change is going to do anything, so we're skeptical.
Mm,
Two, we don't know how to meditate,
right.
and we don't want to try something new that makes us feel stupid. We don't like to feel stupid. We don't like to
Mm,
feel incompetent at something. Um, Three, we are concerned about the people we live with and what they're going to think, and whether there will be interruptions, or uh, for the time. This is just taking time. This is a waste of time. My time could be better used elsewhere. Um, so there's a lot of natural resistances to change and starting a new habit. So one of the ways I encourage my clients to start is to get one of those meditation apps like the Calm app or Headspace or one of those apps. I know a lot of people who are hooked on Peloton and Peloton meditation apps, and they're very helpful. So guided meditations can be helpful for people who, are skeptical that it'll be helpful and they don't know what to do. And I encourage people to cultivate an attitude of curiosity. You don't have to make a lifetime commitment to meditation. You could be curious and say, let me try this for a couple of weeks. It's sort of a little experiment. If I set aside a time, for me, I used to do it like 20 minutes twice a day religiously for a long time. And then I had kids, and that, everybody who has kids knows that they wake you up at all hours and they aren't going to let you sit there and meditate for 20 minutes. It's like, you're mommy, you better be available.
It's that or sleep, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And sleep is just like, oh my gosh, you're so hungry for sleep when you have children. It's like the most perfect thing ever if you can sleep. So yeah, but these apps often they have great people that provide some of these guided meditations, and some of them are short as a minute, just 1 minute of calm where you just listen to ocean music for 1 minute with your eyes closed. Most people can tolerate that. And then you notice, and if you're really mindful, noticing this, you will notice a shift in how you feel internally from just 1 minute of doing deep diaphragmatic breathing, or 1 minute of just listening to this ocean thing and really being attentive and really trying to pay full attention to this one moment of your life. And when you do that, your nervous system as a side effect just calms down, and so I encourage that. Some people are very, very wound up already with real heightened levels of anxiety. Their baseline level of anxiety, their normal is at a level of symptomatic anxiety, and that's their normal, right? So they can't tolerate much more. And so sometimes for those folks, and sometimes those folks have a really hard time just sitting at all, just sitting with their eyes closed is just like, oh my God, just get me out of here, get me out of my head. I don't want to be in my head. And so I often will recommend a moving kind of activity that's meditative, like yoga, like taking a yoga class even once a week. Because you're moving, you're focused on something else. You're not having to sit there just with your own thoughts going ka-tung, 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 haunting you. And then Tai Chi is also a really great practice, Tai Chi or Qigong or whatever, for people who need to move and also could really benefit from a meditative practice, because those are done with your eyes open, and they're slow, contemplative movements that are very, very focused, and they take a lot of energy. However, it slows you down, and it's has a lot of the same health benefits of the sitting meditations that most of us think of when we think of meditation.
Right. Correct me if I'm wrong, but from my understanding, there is different wavelengths in the brain, and I think it goes beta, alpha, delta, gamma, somewhere around that order. And the first two are oftentimes more hyperactive. It's where you can't sit down and your thoughts are sporadic. You feel agitated. You can't sit there and just calm down, right? And from what you're saying, it almost sounds like, because I know from, in sleep, you're in, I think, delta and gamma wavelengths. You're in a lower state. So it sounds like meditation almost brings you there.
Meditation, yeah, there's meditation is really interesting. Like, especially, I know transcendental meditation and mindfulness meditation are the two that have been studied the most, where we have a lot of really good fMRI studies where they really look at how the brain functions in real time when you're meditating. We've got a lot of good data on what happens in the brain when we meditate. And what's interesting about transcendental meditation, so transcendental meditation is the first one that I learned when I was a teenager, the first meditation technique. It's what they call a mantra-based meditation, where you are given a Sanskrit word by your meditation teacher, and you think that word silently, and you learn that your thoughts will kind of come into your mind, and they always do. And when you're aware of the thoughts, then you go back to your mantra sound that you're thinking, and you'll go back and forth between, oh, now I'm thinking the mantra, oh, now I'm thinking my thoughts, oh, now I'm thinking the mantra, now I'm thinking my thoughts, and you're going back and forth, right? But you're sitting quietly. And then at some point in the process of meditation, there will be a point where you have no thoughts and no mantra, and you're in this pure awareness state, which is a unique mental state that's different from deep rest. It's different from sleep. It's different from our waking state, where you're fully awake and alert, and at the same time you are not in your thoughts. Our thoughts are this constant sort of editorializing of what's going on in the world. Oh, my hair looks funny. Oh, I should be doing this or
I'm
that.
hungry.
Or I'm hungry, or and so we're always interpreting and evaluating and judging and telling stories to ourselves. And our thoughts are, constantly there. So rarely are we in a state of pure awareness. And what's interesting about that state is it's called nirvana, it's called bliss, because accompanying that state, often you will get a feeling in your body of just bliss or wonder, or a wonderful feeling. And now you're in your thoughts again going, that feels good.
Right.
And now you're back, mantra thoughts. But that is what a lot of religious leaders that teach meditation in many different cultures refer to as, this sort of source. I think the Maharishi called it the source of creative intelligence, which I love as a phrase.
That's awesome.
Because it's sort of this place of pure awareness. And so but simultaneously, as a side effect, your whole nervous system, your heart rate goes down, your respiration rate goes down, your brain is in a state of pure awareness, but it's also in a state of deep rest. So you got theta going, and then you got your I can't remember what, I think it's beta, but both at the same time, which is a unique, a very unique state of consciousness. So it's not just like resting. So when you're really learn to meditate, you're not just resting. I mean, rest is good, and that would be fine to do. Meditation, though, takes you into a different state of consciousness. And it's what happens when you do that regularly over a period of time is it has a cumulative effect where you can access that state quickly. Right? Like when we're revved up and full of a lot of anxiety, sometimes it takes a while to calm down. I hear people say, when I go on vacation, it's usually by day 3 that I start to really relax.
Oh yeah, I've heard that, especially for people that are workaholics or constantly stressed all the time.
Where they're not doing regular stress management, they're not able to like quickly get into that state of, wow, I'm on a Hawaiian beach and I can just be here, and just be. So, that's the benefits of meditation. But to get there, you have to sort of maybe try it out as a curious adventure, as opposed to, a lot of times people feel like, oh, it's another chore. This is another chore I got to do. I got too many chores. And so I just encourage them to start really small, 1-minute meditation. And then the mindfulness technique is also a very well-researched technique that I've learned how to do as well, which we can do anywhere all the time. And that is basically paying attention on purpose to the present moment as it's unfolding, moment by moment, without judging it, without the editorializing. It's like,
right, like a third person observer.
Yes, it's like I'm just here, present, talking with you. It's just you and I here in this moment. And when we are aware of the moment we're in, and that's all we're aware of, we're paying attention to, and we're doing it on purpose. And we're not judging it. We're not saying this is good, this is bad, or this is fun, this is not fun, or this, all of the interpretations of reality that flood our thoughts. We're letting those float by like clouds. We're just not giving them attention. We're not attaching to those thoughts, and we're not believing our thoughts like they're true, but we're just fully present in this moment. Look at this moment. We have a moment, and its potential is wondrous. We can just be here, just be here in this moment, without any expectation or evaluation. So when we can do that, again, as a side effect, our nervous system arousal goes way down. We're more effective. We're less likely to be accident prone because we're paying attention to where we're putting our feet or what we're doing. And we can do that mindfulness with chores. I have a section in Frazzle Brain about mindfulness with chores. Just any kind of chore you do: brushing your teeth, washing dishes, folding laundry, putting things away. If we just bring our attention fully to, this is all I am doing. This is, just ask yourself, what am I doing right now? I am walking down the hall to go brush my teeth. I am taking another step. Life is very manageable when you break it down like that. But what makes it unmanageable is where we're trying to drink the fire hose of life all at once, as if, I can solve all my life's problems and I have to do it all right now.
Yeah.
And that's
also
hard.
Sorry, not to cut you off, but I think another big issue is, especially today, in today's day and age, we have almost everything on demand. So we are able to listen to music while we brush our teeth or drive our car, or, it's almost like we can multitask, even though we're not really great at multitasking. We attempt it anyways. And I think that also partially probably gives us this lack of mindfulness and lack of, calmness in things we do, because constantly, scatterbrained and even the simplest chores.
Yes, and there is some research now on anhedonia, or the inability to experience pleasure. One of my colleagues, Dr. Nan Wise, is a neuropsychologist, a neuroscientist. She researches pleasure and orgasm, and there's a real pleasure deficit with all of us being hooked to these momentary hits of dopamine, or they call them dopamine hits, but these momentary diversions that we can't tolerate the slightest bit of boredom. And as a result, our nervous system is bombarded with too much stimulation, so that we are exhausting our ability to experience pleasure. And so what I recommend to people is turn it all off, have designated entertainment times. This is my time for entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
This is my time I'm going to be scrolling through TikTok. And this is my time when I'm going to be doing my social media. And this is my time when I'm going to watch TV. But the other times in my life, I'm going to be fully present in my life. And I'm not looking at this as my entertainment time.
Right.
I'm looking at this as my fully living, being in the moment, paying attention time. And you'll notice if you do that, even like if you're in your car, just driving, just let yourself drive. I love music. I love to sing in my car. I'm not saying don't ever sing or, play music. It's a wonderful thing and it's part of your joy. Do it mindfully, though.
Mm.
Do
I
it
think it makes it more
mindfully.
joyful that way too.
Yes, exactly. If I'm really
Mm-hmm.
listening to the music, I'm really listening, and
Right.
I'm really hearing it and I'm really getting the pleasure from it.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm just like, gotta have all this stimulation going just to get myself out of my head or keep myself from feeling anything, now we're starting to numb our nervous system and we become eventually unable to experience pleasure. And that leads to addictive kinds of behaviors. So,
Right. And seeking
so that
greater and greater things.
exactly higher levels of intensity just to feel something.
Mm-hmm. So, Dr. Schneider, I want to, ask one last question to wrap up this show. The show is called Learn or Be Learned. So I want to ask you, what is one life lesson that you learned that you would like to share with the audience?
I think the most exciting life lesson that I've learned in the last few years of my research is that our mind is so much more powerful than we realize, that our thoughts and how we aim our attention shapes our hormones, our neurobiology, our immune system functioning. And it's really, really important to aim our mind in the direction of compassion instead of outrage, to aim our mind in the direction of healing instead of disease, to aim our mind in the direction of love versus hate, because it has physiological effects on our nervous system and it has social effects and has ripple effects. And the neuropsychology research that's coming out now makes me realize how much I have underestimated what's going on in my own mind and its power on myself and everyone that I interact with. So I think it's very important to think about what you're thinking about, what you believe in, and aim it in a direction that's healthy.
Right. Wow, that's so powerful, right? The idea of mind over matter is, the phrase is taken so lightly, but I think it's so true. Um, the idea of how certain people overcome adversity through the sheer willpower of their minds is, you hear stories all the time of
Vision.
things like
It's
that.
vision. It's how they're aiming their mind. They're aiming their mind where they want to go. They're not aiming their
Mm.
mind where they don't want to go. And
Mm.
that's a really powerful thing. And I hope young people grab onto that idea, and because young people like you are the people changing the world, and your where you aim your mind, what you're trying to do with your show, what you're trying to do with your life, has a lot of power. Has a lot of power.
Well, Dr. Schneider, I really appreciate you being on this show, and honestly, having you on at this point in time in my life feels like an absolute blessing. So thank you so much for being here. I really had an awesome talk with you.
Thank you. I feel really grateful to have met you, and thanks for having me on your show.